My first question is, where did life begin for you? And as you grew up, where obviously you're not. As you grew up, like what influenced you, and who influenced your worldview? That's my first question.
Okay. I was born in Guyana. Guyana, as you know, is culturally Caribbean, but geographically South American. And the time that I grew up was
Which
in
time?
the time that I grew up, it was in the 60s, the 70s. It was an exciting time about change in the third world. So some of the people who influenced my worldview were leaders in the forefront of change, leaders like Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, leaders like Forbes Burnham and Michael Manley being Prime Minister of Jamaica, Forbes Burnham being Prime Minister of Guyana.
Hmm.
Those were some of the people who influenced my worldview.
How did they influence How did they influence you?
They influenced me in two ways. One, by articulating eloquently the importance of change and the importance of embracing values and things you believe in. But they influenced me also in that they pursued change. They didn't necessarily always get the change they wanted, but they had a willingness to fight for what they wanted. And that for me was important.
Mm-hmm. On your online profile, you talk about that you have expertise in Caribbean and inter-American security. Obviously, you have issues with drugs and that stuff in the Caribbean. What got you? What incident or what series of events got you passionate in the field of Caribbean and inter-American security?
Before I became an academic, I was a journalist. And I went to Australia, must have been 1980, to cover a conference as a journalist. It was a Commonwealth Heads of Government conference. And on the agenda of that conference in Melbourne, Australia, was the subject of security of small states in the Commonwealth. Grenada, Malta, Seychelles, Fiji, Vanuatu, Jamaica, all those small countries, not just in the Caribbean, but in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth covers Europe, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, parts of the Caribbean. And so that conference and my reporting on the security challenges of small states piqued my interest in security. And so when it was time for me to do my dissertation as pursuing my PhD, I chose that subject. Now, as I worked on the business of security, I saw how the drugs challenge in the Caribbean had security aspects. It was not simply drugs passing through from South America to North America. There was violence, there was crime, there was illegal arms trafficking. So that for me was the genesis of my interest in security first, and then the drugs and security nexus secondly.
What would you say what would you say are your biggest successes? What are your biggest successes in life, and what are your biggest failures? What, like, things that you loved and things that you regretted?
Some of my biggest successes have nothing to do with being a scholar or being a provost. I'm very proud of the fact that I've got two wonderful children and a wonderful wife. We've been together almost 28 years. I'm very proud of the fact that I have an established reputation in security business. I'm very proud of the fact that I've traveled to more than 40 nations around the world as a scholar, giving lectures, as a journalist. Very proud of the fact that some of my research has set the stage for other people's research. I'm very proud of the fact that my research has been recognized to the point where people try to plagiarize what I write. That is a bad thing in itself, but it is flattering in another way, that somebody thinks what you write is so good that they just want to translate it into a different language and put their name on it. Some of my biggest regrets, well, one of my big regrets is for all the traveling I've done, more than 40 countries, I've never had a chance to go to Africa. There were several opportunities, but the conferences were canceled. I've got a good friend who was a diplomat in South Africa, his ambassador. I were to go there several times, but just couldn't make it happen. So I'm hoping that one day, soon, I'll be able to go to the motherland, even if it's only for a vacation. We have 2 minutes left.
But I have a Q&A. I have a few Q&A questions. What got you here to this college?
I had taught at York 2 decades ago as an adjunct.
You were adjunct here?
I have a sense of the importance of what York and what CUNY does, what York does and what CUNY and York do together. I was teaching full-time as a professor at Lehman College. I was recruited to Florida, then Florida International University, starting a new PhD program in political science. They were looking for faculty who specialize in the Caribbean and Latin America. And so I was recruited there. Spent 12 wonderful years in Florida. And once I left Florida, went to Virginia. Once I left Virginia, the opportunity to come to York revealed itself. I had several offers in New York within the CUNY system, two off actually. I decided to come to York.
How have students performed during your tenure as provost and vice president of academic affairs? How have students has performance gone up?
It's very difficult to answer that definitively because performance is measured in a variety of different ways. You can measure performance by people's grades. I don't have a sense as provost. We have almost 8,000 students. I don't have a sense as to what's the comparative grade point average of our students between then and now. That's the kind of thing that's very difficult to make a judgment on. But I think I have a sense of students' performance in one specific area that is critical to the whole college, and that is in undergraduate research. Very proud of the fact that this year we had our 3rd annual Student Research Day. And if you compare the number of students and what they presented in the first research day, grew large in the second research day. We had a good complaint in the second research day that we had too limited a space for all the student posters. And so we moved into the gym, and if you were there, it was a wonderful display of students' performance in research. Mm-hmm. We joined the leading student research organization in the nation called the Council on Undergraduate Research. When I was at Florida International University, the college that I had the honor of leading, we were in CUR, it's called CUR. I was even at one point elected to the national leadership of CUR. And CUR holds an annual conference every year where students from across the nation apply to present their research, and some are selected, others are not. We have 3 students selected this year to present their research. Thankfully, the conference is being held right in New Jersey, so I don't have to find airfare for them. But we were able to secure funding to send the 3 students, pay their registration, pay their hotel, and along with the students, the professor who is mentoring them, they will be showcasing their research at a conference in New Jersey next month. That for me is students' performance. That for me is part of the pride.
What changes have you made in terms of academic standards here at the college?
One of the things that President Keyes did before I arrived was to increase the admission requirements. And that was necessary because the state of New York does not provide funding for senior colleges to do remediation. But before President Keyes came, York was taking in students who were not well prepared, and they were dropping out. and it didn't make any sense taking them in and having a revolving door. And so the standards were increased in 2005. In 2009, the standards were increased again. We're hoping that with that increase will come a greater retention. We don't have to be dismissing and putting on probation so many students. And the students who are not eligible to come would first go to a community college, get their associate, and then come. And our hope is that as we raise the bar on the student performance side, we raise the bar on the faculty performance side.
What are the best things about your job here as Provost and Academic Affairs VP?
What are the best what?
What are the best things about your job?
Part of any university requires some group of individuals to facilitate hiring faculty, facilitate providing the resources of faculty to teach and do research. I am responsible for that on the academic side, and I feel very comforted in the fact that we were able to hire for 4 years in a row a good number of faculty. That is one of the things that I'm proud of. It makes me feel good. What I don't feel very good about is that partly because of the budget crisis, we don't have funds to continue hiring full-time faculty as we should. Even the funds to replace some of the people who retired or resigned, those funds are not there. So it's a mixed bag, and this is true of every CUNY school and it's true of every university in terms of positives and negatives for the job of the provost.
So what you just mentioned was some of the worst things about your job?
One of the things I wouldn't call it the worst thing, is one of the unpleasant things about my job is not being able to get the funding to continue hiring faculty as we should.
Mm-hmm. What future changes do you plan to make as a provost and an academic affairs senior VP?
I'll just name 3. And it's not so much change as it is development of things, one of the things that is here already. I would love to see, and we're working towards ensuring that the undergraduate research program grows bigger. And it grows bigger in a way that allows us to get grants to fund more students going on conferences. Love to have more grants to provide funding for students who are at York. So expansion of the research program for students is one of my plans, which we're going to try to pursue in the next couple of years. Secondly, we need to pursue more graduate programs. We need to have a graduate program that was part of the plan for pharmaceutical sciences. We need to have a graduate program for accounting. We're hoping to have a graduate program for social work. So graduate master's programs is part of the expectation. And my final hope and plan is to increase our grant awards, the number of grant dollars that our faculty get. And I've got to take only one more because I've got to go.
What are your future plans outside of York?
Outside of York, I want to be able to do what I've been able to do so far, serving as a dean and then as a provost, and that is still maintain some scholarly engagement. 2 days ago I was in Washington speaking at the OAS. I'd like to be able to do those things. In 2 weeks I'm going back to Washington to speak at the National Defense University. Next month I'm going to Barbados to moderate a conference and bring the diplomats, the military heads, and the politicians in the entire Caribbean, from the United States, Canada, Britain, to talk about security issues. I'd love to be able to continue doing that because I think it's important to have not just the administrative side, but the scholarly side.
And what got you into journalism?
And that has to be the last one, because I've got to go.
Okay, but so what got you into journalism?
I was a journalism major as a student. I did political science, and I did journalism while I was in college. I was doing student journalism.
All right, so you're journalism. So you're interested in like, what's going on in the world and okay.
Alrighty. Well, good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Okay.